My name is Marcus Hayes. In 2003, I was sentenced to death for a murder I did commit. I won't try to justify it. I did it. I took a man's life during a robbery gone sideways. Rage, pride, fear. It all mixed into something monstrous. They called me cold-blooded, said I showed no remorse. And honestly, for a long time, I didn't. I spent years on death row, becoming even harder. I mocked preachers who visited. I told one chaplain, if God's real, he better have good lawyers. October 3, 2024. That was the day they were supposed to kill me. I remember walking down that long hallway in shackles. The guards didn't look at me. They never do. You're a ghost before you even die. They strapped me to the gurney. The warden read some statement. I stared at the ceiling. I refused a last meal, refused a last prayer. I figured if hell was real, I'd take it like a man. They pushed the drugs in. First one, then the second. It was cold. I felt it race through my arm like ice. My vision blurred. My heart slowed. I heard a distant voice counting down, but then everything snapped like the sound of 1,000 doors slamming shut at once. And I woke up, but not in the prison. The floor beneath me cracked and burned. I was standing in a place so dark it seemed to swallow light. The air smelled like sulfur and screams. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't run. The ground groaned and trembled beneath my feet. I wasn't alone. They came out of the shadows, things I won't even try to describe. Twisted, crawling, laughing with voices that didn't sound human. They called me by name, over and over, Marcus, Marcus, like a lullaby from the pit of death itself. I screamed, I begged, I clawed at the air, but I was frozen in fear. And that's when I heard it, the voice. Not theirs, his. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a shout. It was like thunder that shook the bones of hell. Enough. And in that moment, the demons scattered like insects. The fire dimmed, and a light pierced through the darkness, blinding. Holy, unstoppable. And from that light stepped a man, glorious, radiant, and wounded. I didn't know who he was at first, until I saw his hands. His hands. They had holes in them. Clean, open wounds, not bleeding, but glowing, with a kind of light that made the fire of hell seem like a cheap imitation. The heat I felt moments before was terrifying. But this light? It was holy. It burned in a different way, a good way, a true way. I fell to my knees instantly, not because I was forced to, but because I couldn't stand. Not before him. The demons, the pain, the sulfurate was all gone now. And in the stillness, all I could hear was my own heart breaking. I remembered every moment of my life where I chose darkness. The knife in my hand, the look in that man's eyes as I took his last breath. The nights I laughed about it later, thinking I was untouchable. Every wicked word, every time I spit on grace, it all rushed back like a tidal wave of guilt. I couldn't look him in the face. I didn't even need to. I already knew who he was. Jesus. The name left my lips like a confession and a cry for help all at once. My voice cracked under the weight of it. I wasn't praying. I was pleading. I don't know how long I wept. It felt like eternity. But I'll never forget what he did next. He knelt down, God himself knelt down to me, and he lifted my chin until my eyes met his. I've never seen eyes like that. They held sorrow deeper than the oceans, mercy wider than the sky, and love that could crack the hardest stone. But what stunned me the most was that I saw myself in them. Not the murderer, not the convict. I saw a son. He spoke not loud, but it echoed through my soul. I died for you. Even you. I wanted to tell him no, that I wasn't worth it, that he made a mistake, that I belonged in hell. But he already knew my thoughts. He pressed those wounded hands against my heart, and suddenly, everything I carried lifted. I felt lighter than I had ever felt in my life. Then he said, "You were dead, but I have plans for you still." And with a rush of wind, the light grew so intense that it swallowed everything around me. I tried to hold on to him, but he said, "Not yet. Go back. Tell them." I didn't want to go. After what I had seen, I never wanted to return to this world again. But I obeyed. And that's when I gasped for air and opened my eyes, back in the death chamber. I came back with a violent gasp like a man rising from a deep ocean, desperate for air. My chest heaved, my eyes flew open. I was strapped to the same table where they had killed me. I could still feel the needle in my arm. The machines were going crazy. Alarms, yelling. The doctors were shouting, one of them cursing under his breath. A guard dropped his clipboard. A nurse screamed. They weren't expecting me to wake up. Nobody was. I looked around, dazed, barely able to speak. My throat was raw, my heart pounding, but I remembered everything. I remembered the fire, the darkness, the mocking voices, and I remembered the man with the wounds. "Jesus," I croaked. That was the first thing I said. A medic leaned in close and said, "What did you say?" I just whispered again. He pulled me out. They didn't understand. How could they? I had flatlined, pronounced dead. They had done everything by the book. The official paperwork had already started. I was supposed to be a statistic, a finished story. But Jesus had a different plan. I spent the next 24 hours in observation. No one could explain it. They called it a medical anomaly. Some sort of electrical resurgence. A freak occurrence. But I knew better. I had seen hell. I had heard the voice of the Lord. And I had been pulled out not because I earned it, not because I deserved it, but because he loved me anyway. News spread through the prison fast. Inmates started whispering. Hayes came back. Some thought I'd gone insane. Some were terrified. Even the guards looked at me differently, like I was radioactive. One chaplain came in the next day, wide-eyed, and said, "Marcus, what happened to you?" And I told him everything. No filter, no sugarcoating. He wept. He actually wept right there, beside my bed. Then he prayed with me. For the first time in my life, I didn't mock the prayer. I meant it. I gave my life to Christ right there in that hospital bed. My voice cracked. My hands shook. But my soul finally felt clean. I had been a killer, a monster. But in that moment, I became something else. I became forgiven. The days that followed were like walking through a fog of disbelief and wonder. The prison officials couldn't explain what happened, but the story leaked fast. Some guards whispered that God had given me a second chance. Some inmates scoffed, calling it a trick or a lie. I didn't care what they said. I was too busy wrestling with what I had seen. Hell was real. The demons, the fire, the endless tormented, wasn't a metaphor. It was a place, and I was there. But even there, Jesus came for me. He didn't condemn me for my crimes or my hate. He reached into the darkness and pulled me out by his wounds. I spent that first week after waking up praying like I never had before, not for freedom from prison, but freedom from the chains on my soul. I confessed everything to God, to the chaplain, and to myself. The anger, the bitterness, the pride, all of it had to go. I started reading the Bible, something I'd mocked my whole life. I flipped through the pages, searching for answers, for mercy, for a reason to live. I found it in the stories of redemption, the thief on the cross, Paul the persecutor, David the sinner. They weren't perfect men. Neither was I, but God still used them. One night, I knelt by my prison bunk and said the hardest words I ever spoke. "Jesus, I'm sorry. Save me." And he did. From that moment on, I knew my life had changed. I wasn't the same man who walked into that death chamber. I was a new creation, given breath, given mercy, given a mission. I started sharing my story with anyone who would listen, fellow inmates, guards, chaplains. Some laughed, some cried, but many came to know the same Jesus who had pulled me from the flames. If you're watching this and feel trapped by your past, by your sins, by your mistakes, know this: no one is beyond His grace. The darkest pit can be flooded with His light. The deepest chains can be broken by His love. He pulled me out of hell, and He can pull you out too. Even with my newfound faith, life behind bars didn't get easier. I faced skepticism, hostility, and isolation. Some inmates accused me of playing the system. Others called me a fraud or worse. Guards kept their distance. But inside, I was fighting a battle far greater than any prison yard rivalry. The memories of hell haunted me. The screams, the darkness, the demons who knew my name and sought to drag me back. It was terrifying, but also a constant reminder of what I'd escaped. I held on to that image of Jesus' wounded hands like a lifeline. Those scars were real proof that love was stronger than sin. I began writing letters to my victims' families, asking for forgiveness. I couldn't erase the past, but I wanted to show I was truly sorry. Some responded with anger, others with silence. A few wrote back saying they were praying for me. My story began to spread beyond the prison walls. Christian ministries invited me to share my testimony. I spoke at churches, youth groups, and prisons. My voice cracked, my hands shook, but my message was clear. No one is beyond redemption. No soul is beyond God's reach. I am not proud of my past. I am not excusing it. But I am grateful for what came after death took hold of me, because it showed me the unimaginable grace of Jesus. If you're watching, please listen carefully. It's not the mistakes you made that define you. It's the God who waits for you to come home. He pulled me out of hell, and He is waiting to pull you out too. One of the hardest things about my experience was sharing it with my own family. When I called my mother after waking up, her voice cracked with relief and disbelief. She had prayed every day for me, never giving up hope. But hearing my story, the visions of hell and Jesus reaching down to save me, was almost too much for her to process. My siblings were divided. Some thought I was telling tall tales, or worse, lying to get sympathy. Others listened quietly, sensing something real in my words. I realized then that this journey wasn't just about me. It was about healing broken relationships, rebuilding trust, living a life worthy of the mercy I'd been shown. That meant confronting the darkest parts of myself, not hiding from them. It meant forgiveness, not just asking for it, but extending it to my victims, to those who hated me, and to myself. Jesus taught me that mercy isn't cheap. It demands everything, but it also offers everything in return: peace, purpose, and a new beginning. In prison, I've started a small prayer group with a handful of men who, like me, have tasted the depths and long for hope. Together, we read scripture, share testimonies, and pray for the strength to change. I'm not perfect. I stumble, I struggle. But every day, I remember those wounded hands reaching for me in the fire, and I choose to hold on. because the one who pulled me out of hell still holds me tight. The transformation wasn't just spiritual, it was physical, emotional, and mental. I went from a man defined by anger and violence to someone trying to embody peace and compassion. That took time. Years of wrestling with guilt, regret, and the consequences of my crimes. But I never walked that path alone. Every night, I pray for those I hurt, for their families, for the man I killed. I ask God to heal their wounds, as He healed mine. Sometimes I hear from them letters, calls, even visits. Those moments remind me that redemption isn't just about me, it's about restoration. I also pray for the men who still walk the dark path, the ones who feel like they're already too far gone. I tell them what I've learned. Hell is real, but so is heaven. And Jesus Christ's wounds are the bridge between the two. When I share my testimony now, I don't hold back the horror of what I saw. The darkness, the pain, the hopelessness, because it's real. But I also don't hesitate to tell them about the light, the love that pulled me out. To anyone listening, no matter how deep your sin, no matter how dark your past, there is a hand reaching for you. The wounds of Jesus speak louder than any judgment. His love breaks every chain. I am living proof, and I will spend the rest of my days telling that truth. If you've made mistakes, big ones, I want you to know this: you are not beyond God's mercy. The story of my death and resurrection is not unique. It's the story of God's relentless love for every lost soul. I came face to face with my worst nightmare and found the greatest hope. I stood in hell and was pulled out by grace. My life is no longer mine to live. It belongs to Him, to Jesus, the one who bore wounds for sinners like me. If you're searching, doubting, broken, or afraid, ask Him for mercy. He hears you. He loves you. He waits for you, because no one is beyond the reach of His love. And that is the greatest truth I've ever known.